Well, good day. Today's lesson is about hard drives, these little devices that are inside your computer. A hard drive, first of all, is inside your computer. So it's this little black box down here at the bottom inside your computer. Hard drives are used for storage. You can store lots of bits, and of course bits turn into bytes. You can store a lot of bits on a hard drive even when the electricity is turned off, and that's why hard drives are good. It can store a lot, and it keeps things stored even when the electricity is turned off. When you turn off your computer, the bits and bytes are still there. Here's a picture of a hard drive that has two little platters. Somebody took the cover off of this hard drive and now it's just going to be ruined. They took it off just to show you what was on the inside. Here's a hard drive that has three platters. Again, somebody took the top off and so now this thing is ruined, but they were just trying to show you what's going on the inside. This one has five platters. You see these big pancake-looking silver things are called platters. Platters. Hard drives also have arms. The arm is this entire thing that stretches all the way out here to the end. This one happens to have five platters, and so it has five arms. Can you barely see them down there? At the end of each of the arms is a read-write head, and it's a little electromagnet at the very end. And this whole arm can move back and forth across the disk. So here's a little diagram of how a hard drive works. It's got platters, it's got side 0, side 1. In computers, we always start counting with 0. So the platter has a side 0, it has this actuator arm, and this actuator arm has a little read-write head on the end, and it could read and write onto this top side 0 of this 0 platter. And at the same time, just like a giant comb, it can also read and write on the bottom of the disk. That's not like an optical disc. Optical disc can only write on one side, but a hard drive can write on both sides of the platter. These platters are divided up into tracks and sectors. And look at these little read-write heads at the end of this actuator arm. Let's learn more about these tracks and sectors. Here's a platter that I drew, and it's made up of concentric circles. That's a circle within a circle, and these circles within a circle are called tracks. Tracks. It's just like if somebody had to run around a track and everybody had to stay in their own lane. It's not like a spiral. Like an optical disc has spirals, but this doesn't have spirals. No, it has tracks where everybody has to stay in their own lane. This platter is divided up like a pizza pie, and it's divided into pieces called sectors. So these are all going to be called sectors. Each one of these tracks all the way around is filled with magnetic spots. And here's thousands and thousands of little magnetic spots that are all around this first track, which would be called track 0. And these magnetic spots are on all the tracks. Then there's the actuator arm that can move back and forth across the disk. And at the very end of the actuator arm, there's a little magnet. It's an electromagnet, and that's called the read-write head. The actuator arm can pivot, and it can make the read-write head rest over every track, all the way to the very inside and all the way back out to the outside. The whole platter, the whole disk is going to be spinning, and the actuator arm is going to be sliding sort of back and forth across the tracks. Here I drew just the platter. This is a sideways view. This is going to be the platter, and on that platter is microscopic magnetic spots. So here's my little magnetic spots, and they're not this big. I just made them big so we can sort of see them. So these magnetic spots are these little magnetic spots here as well. Now in real life, there's magnetic spots on the bottom as well, but I didn't draw those, just to show you how it works. Well, I know you went to elementary school and you learned a little bit about magnets, and magnets have two ends. What do you call the two ends of a magnet? I know you went to elementary school, so the two ends of a magnet are called... That's right, they're called north and south. North end of a magnet and the south end of a magnet. Yeah, it's not positive and negative. That's a battery. Here, let me move this whole thing down to the bottom of the slide. Well, there's the platter, and this little actuator arm is with a little read-write head on the end. It's going to sit just on top of these magnetic spots, and it doesn't touch. You see how it's very, very close? But it doesn't scrape across the magnetic spots. There's always a little gap of space in there. Here's a picture of it. Here's the read-write head, and here's the platter surface. And you can see that the read-write head is very close. It's very close to the platter. If you had a smoke particle, it would jam in between the read-write head and the platter, and your hard disk would get all scraped up. If you put a fingerprint on your surface of your platter, your hard disk is probably not going to work anymore. A piece of dust is gigantic compared to the little space between the read-write head. And a human hair, forget about it. It's way too big. That's why when somebody took the cover off of those first few hard drives that I showed you, that hard drive is probably not going to work anymore. So we know that the read-write head is very close to the magnetic spots on the platter, but I'm going to draw them a little farther apart just to show you how it works. Now this read-write head is north-south, but the magnetic spot on the platter is north-south as well. So the south end of the actuator arm is near the north end of the magnetic spot. What's going to happen with opposites that get close to each other? Opposites attract. And when that actuator arm feels that magnetic spot, it's going to pull down a little bit on the actuator arm. He's going to feel a little tugging. I felt an attraction. He's going to send out a signal. I felt an attraction. It tried to pull me down a little bit. He's going to send out a 1 for that. Now the platter's going to be spinning. Now the actuator arm is north-south, but the magnetic spot is south-north. And I know that likes repel, don't they? Likes repel. And so this actuator arm is going to be pushed up a little bit. He's going to feel like I'm getting pushed up, and he's going to send out a 0 for that. The platter's going to spin. South is trying to meet south. I know that likes will repel. He's going to send out a 0. The platter will spin. And now south is meeting north, and there's going to be an attraction. He's going to get pulled down a little bit. He's going to say, I felt somebody pulling me down a little bit. That's a 1. And then a new magnetic spot. Likes will repel. They'll push apart. He's going to send a 0. And that's just going to keep happening over and over and over again. And now look, we've started to form bits. And bits grouped together, we know, are bytes. Here's an example. As the platter is spinning, the on is already spun past, the off has already spun past, and he says, I felt an on and an off, and on, off, off. And he's going to keep feeling these, and he's going to send out these bits to the ASCII code, and the ASCII code is going to give us English-looking letters. Here's a short little 2.5-minute video that I found on YouTube that shows you a little bit about how a hard drive works. You can look it up for yourself on YouTube. It's called Computer Hard Drive Seeking Demonstration. Let's watch it.
Okay, so here we have a computer hard drive which has a transparent cover so that you can see the internal workings. There's a voice coil actuator here which is going to move the servo arm across the magnetic surface here where the data is. Now what we'll see is some examples of tracking on the servo arm. So there are computer tracks. If I imagine my fingers here being 4 tracks, when it does a 1-track seek, it will be moving to this track, then this one, then this one, then this one. Then it will switch to 2-track seeks, where it will jump 2 tracks at a time, and then 4 and 8 tracks and so on. Now it happens so quickly that it looks almost like smooth continuous motion, but it's not. It's really moving to one particular track, locking on it within 10% tracking error so it could read-write data, and then moving on to the next one. And I'll spin it up now and we'll see the demo. Okay, so the disk starts up with a certain initialization procedure, and then it will go into this test demo. This is not what your normal computer hard drive would do when it was running, but it's going to demonstrate seeking different tracks. And I want to emphasize that it accurately locks onto a track each time. So now the disk has spun up, and now you can see it's doing 1-track seeks. So it's moving on to 1 track at a time, locking on and moving on to the next one. So you can see as it does this motion, it looks kind of continuous, but it's not. It's actually moving from one specific track to another jumping, I think we're up to 32 or 64 tracks at a time on each sweep. Now it's actually moving almost half its full distance per given seek, so it's moving to 3 specific locations, locking on and then moving back. As you can see, it kind of happens too fast for you to really see. You just sort of see a ghost image of 3 servo arms. But it's really rapidly locking on track. Now it's doing its maximum length seek, locking onto one track and switching to another track that's as far away as possible. And it's doing it, this is the speed it would typically operate at. After this, it will switch to random seeks, and the motion looks kind of random, but it's not. It's really picking out a random track, moving to it precisely, locking on, and then moving on to the next one. So after this, you'll see it, here it is, doing random seeks, as it would if it was trying to pick up data from random positions.
Well, that was pretty interesting. I found another little video on YouTube that shows you how a hard drive works in slow motion, and you can look it up on YouTube yourself. Let's watch it. It's only about 1.5 minutes.
You've got the audience now. Let's go home.
She's not allowed too much ham anyway.
It's not going to move out yet.
That's quick. Do you see how fast that moved? Yeah.
Well, that was pretty interesting. Well, some people might want to know how much information can your hard drive hold? And that's sort of like asking how many people can fit into a car. Well, it depends on who made the car. You can have a car that's made just for 2 people to sit in, or you can make a car that has room for 5, or you could have a big giant car that has room for 8. So just like that, hard drives are made in different sizes. If you had a 500 gigabyte hard drive, that would just be an ordinary, everyday, older hard drive. You should not go bragging to people that you have a 500 gigabyte hard drive. That's kind of just ordinary. In fact, it's kind of a little bit old nowadays. You could have a 1 terabyte hard drive. That's 1,000 gigabytes. If you had a 1 terabyte hard drive, that's a big hard drive. I found one here in June of 2020. A 12 terabyte hard drive. Are you kidding me? This is the biggest hard drive I've ever seen. Typically, though, especially in school, if you had a 500 gigabyte hard drive, that's just ordinary hard drive. We know that a CD can hold information, and we learned that a CD can hold 700 megabytes. Now, 700 megabytes is really 0.7 gigabytes. We know that a DVD can hold even more. It can hold 4.7 gigabytes. And we already learned that a Blu-ray disc can hold 25 gigabytes. In our previous lesson, we learned about RAM, these little RAM sticks, and a typical everyday computer will probably have about 8 gigabytes of RAM. But a hard drive can hold a lot more than 8, a lot more than 25. A hard drive typically can hold at least 500 gigabytes. That's a lot. And that's a small hard drive. This is how big a 1 terabyte hard drive would be compared to your RAM or compared to your Blu-ray disc. You can put a lot of whatever's in RAM in this big, giant storage space, a 1 terabyte hard drive. Well, let's talk about the advantages of each one of these storage devices. These are all storage devices. What's the advantage of a CD or a DVD or a Blu-ray? Well, the big advantage is it doesn't take electricity to keep the bits and bytes in. They're burned onto the CD. We learned that. So they're kind of permanent, aren't they? Those bits and bytes are not going away. The other good thing about these optical discs is that you can carry them around from one computer to another. You can put them in your pocket. You can put them in your backpack. What about RAM, though? What's good about RAM? Well, the good thing about RAM is it's very fast. You can take information on and off of RAM very, very fast. There's no moving parts, are there? But the bad thing about RAM is you can't put very much stuff in RAM. 8 gigabytes is not really that much. What about a hard drive, though? Hard drive has a lot of space. That's what's good about it. You can store a lot of stuff on your hard drive. But what's bad about a hard drive? What's bad about a hard drive is it has lots of moving parts. And moving parts are most likely going to fail someday. The other bad thing about a hard drive is it's not portable. You can't really just easily take it out of your computer and go put it in some other computer. Now, you could do that, but it's not really a portable device. So let's find out how much your hard drive can hold. Here's what you do. You open up the File Explorer. The easiest way to do that is just do Windows E. Hold down the Windows key and tap the E key. Or you can do that little yellow folder in the desktop taskbar down at the bottom of the screen. Once you get the File Explorer open, you're going to right-click the C drive and look at its properties. Here, let me show you how to do that. I'll do Windows E. So here I am in the File Explorer, and you want to go find your C drive. You might have to open up this PC. Yours might say My PC, but you open up My PC or this PC, and you go find the C drive. Now mine says Lushenko, but you can name your C drive whatever you want, as long as it's a short name. I'm going to give it a right-click and look at its properties. So here's the properties of my C drive. It says I have a capacity of 451 gigabytes. So is this a very big hard drive, or just an ordinary hard drive, or is it kind of small? What do you think? I'd say it's kind of ordinary. Can you tell if my hard drive is pretty much full or pretty much empty? Can you tell? Yeah, you tell by looking at the used space. The blue stuff is what I've used up already, and the gray stuff is my free space. So most of my hard drive is pretty much full. Let's go back. Well, let's do a hard drive summary. What have we learned today? A hard drive stores bytes inside your computer. It doesn't use the internet. It uses the hard drive that's already inside your computer. We know that a hard drive uses magnetic spots. If you turn the computer off, the bytes are still there, even though the computer's not on. Electricity is all the way off. The bytes are still there because they're held in magnetic spots. A hard drive has lots of moving parts, so moving parts are more susceptible to failure. We know that it has platters, tracks, and sectors. We know what those things are. And hard drives have a very large capacity compared to other storage devices. Well, that's about all there is to it.